Well, I actually have something I was going to bring up. It's in theaters and it's doing pretty well. You brought it up, the Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, right?
You're a
It
Swiftie, aren't you?
made, yeah. So it's made $131 million at the domestic box office, right? They have outgrossed every DC EU movie this year. I mean, that's
Shake it off. Shake it off, Earl. Shake it off.
I mean, that's a little terrifying and amusing at the same time. Um, but that's definitely an idea of how some things are drawing fans to watch it, while others are just, they're just not hitting what they're expected, while some are killing it. What do you think about that, Lord Cephas?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of feel like the Eras tour that she's performing on is really, dare I use the term, enchanted? Yes, that was a deep cut. That is a Taylor Swift song, if anyone's interested in that one. I could also say her shows have a lot of style. That's another song that she has from 2014. Here's what I think. I think people are starved for good entertainment. And she's an excellent entertainer. She's a good vocalist. She's a good songwriter. And if you give people what they want, they'll keep coming back. She's not for everybody, but apparently she's for a lot of people. She's dating Travis Kelce, the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Football fans are like, oh, we don't want to hear any more Taylor Swift anymore. Do you understand? The NFL is getting even more coverage, and the NFL is king, and yet it gets talked about more. The New York Jets hosted the Kansas City Chiefs a couple weeks ago on a Sunday night. The tickets were through the roof, not because the Jets are that good, but because Taylor Swift was going to be there. There are gambling lines in Vegas. How many times will she appear during a broadcast? And over under. The young lady, she knows no bounds. And so she has a built-in fan base, and the Swifties are coming, man. They're going to show up. So good on her. Again, if I'm a movie theater, I am ecstatic that she wanted to work this, because you'll notice she didn't go to any Hollywood studios. She did this distribution deal on her own. A lot of theaters love that. A lot of movie production houses, a lot of production companies hated it. They wanted a piece of that money, and they got frozen out. She did all that dealing on her own. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of these the film industry, all the different companies, they have to learn how to take their preconceived conceptions of what's going to be a box office gold, and they need to learn how to shake it off, shake. Oh, but to tie into that, if you want to look at some interesting numbers, okay. 2019, the box office in 2019, a worldwide box office, we had 9 movies that made $1 billion or more in 2019, right? In 2020, there were no movie that made over $500 million.
Right.
In 2021, we had only 7 movies over $500 million and only 1 movie to hit $1 billion. That was actually Spider-Man No Way Home, $1.9 billion. So, I mean, those numbers are ridiculous, and it is still, that was the COVID era. 2022, same thing, you had 3 movies over $1 billion. And then you had the next 6 that were over $500 million. All right. Now we get to 2023, and we have 2 movies over $1 billion. And after that, you only have 6 movies over 500,000. So we're still very much in line with 2022, and everybody in 2022 was like, oh, it'll get better in 2023. But it's right there at the same numbers. I mean, obviously 2021 and 2020 were abysmal. But will we ever see the numbers that we saw pre-COVID 2019, 2018? Or is this the norm? And will Hollywood adapt before it's too late? What do you think, Lord Cephas?
I don't know if there's still time, to be honest with you. And I'm not an alarmist. I'm not a the sky is falling type personality, but I think this is the norm. For years, going to the movies was a big deal. Take the family, get the popcorn. For the longest time, all we had was popcorn and candy when we were growing up. Then movie theaters, you had nachos. But over time, they started having, the frozen pizza they heat up that's terrible, but you want it anyway. Or burger patties that may or may not be actual burgers, but they're there. Now you have theater chains that do full service menus, and they'll bring you the food right at your seat. All that gimmicky stuff is cool. Don't get me wrong. Wish we had one in our town. We don't. Take your own food. And by food, I mean candy, sneak it in the purse. But I think this is the norm because I don't think there's a need to go to the movie theaters anymore. I look across the room. I have a television over there that has all the streaming platforms I subscribe to, and I can pretty much watch anything I want any time of day. Heck, come tomorrow, well, in a couple of hours, I'll be able to watch Five Nights at Freddy's. Sitting over there in my love seat with the dogs on my lap and never have to go to the movie theater. I think there is a missing component of the enthusiasm, the excitement for going to the movies. A lot of people don't want to get out and be around people anymore. Some of it is post-COVID. Some of it was kind of there with a lot of people before that even happened. And so how do you get people back? How do restaurants get people back when people have had bad experiences? I don't know. How do you get people to come back and try a service when they didn't enjoy it the last time? It's the question businesses wrestle with all the time. Hollywood is no different. It's just that Hollywood is a billion-dollar industry that is not raking in billions of dollars in profits anymore. And that puts them at a disadvantage. But I'll say this and turn it back to you. The theater is in a rough spot too. They need people to come out. The concessions are marked up so high because that's how they make their money. They don't make their money off showing the movies. And so if people aren't coming buying the concessions, where's the money? Go to your theater. How staffed are they? Not like it would have been 10 years ago. One issue is people working, getting people to work. But number two, there's not as much reason for staffing. Earl, I'll throw it back to you.
I completely agree with you there. Now, I do want to point out something else that since the COVID era, our worldwide, our overseas box office has taken a massive hit. Would you agree? Possibly. But the interesting thing is, this year and last year, we only have two movies that have made over $500 million in America, domestically. But if you go backwards, before 2020 and in 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, ticket prices were cheaper, but we still were only hitting 2 to 3 movies over $500 million domestically. So now ticket prices are more expensive. Now we're looking at, we're saying, oh, we need to make this amount of money because we're spending this much money. So there's inflation going on. But if you look at the numbers, other than a few movies that just are crazy when it comes to ticket sales, we're still selling about the same. The movie industry is making about the same amount of money as they were 5 years ago, 7 years ago. But ticket prices have went up. And everything's went up, but they're still making about the same amount of money, and they're spending so much more money than they used to. So, I'm not sure what's going on there. You know what? You may be right. It may be too late for what we know as the traditional Hollywood studio. I don't have two other things to say about that, but I'll let you. What do you think about Hollywood studios today?
Earl, that's an interesting question about the box offices because, as you said, the numbers should be way higher. I mean, you look at the ticket prices versus even 5 years ago, and the gap that there is, which to me would indicate that movies should be making way more money. And that was the discussion we had for a long time with, like, say, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. It made $800 something million, but you had less people go see it if you do count the ticket prices and then do the math. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, you lost a third of your audience. Now that may not seem like much but we made 800 something million, but you lost a third of your audience. That means next time around, you're already down a third. What will the cost be next movie? Will it be $25 a person? Oh, we made 900 million, but at $25 a ticket. Again, that's an average because premium seats cost more, your IMAX and all of those things. And then some areas have discount days. And so it's an average. But I feel like the numbers you bring forward are really instructive in that. It's like that paints a little bit more of a gloomy picture. It really does make me feel like streaming is, well, we already know that's where life is now. It's not going that way. It is there. But I think the way we consume entertainment, whether it's on our phone or our tablet or our iPad, I think we're just going to see that continue to explode. And I think you're going to see it affect Hollywood. But I also think you're going to see it affect the versions of television, all the TV shows that we're living without. We don't need them again when they come back. I mean, I like them. I like the ones I like. But here I am almost in November. I haven't seen the first episode of some shows that always start in September, and I don't miss it. It's not because I'm mad at them. I just don't need it. I found other things to fill the gap. Now, 3, 4, 5 months down the road, when that comes back, where, as you said, am I going to find the time once I've filled that? I think that's a very scary proposition for entertainment as a whole. And as I said, especially when anybody can grab an iPad and shoot something and upload it. And if it's good, and a lot of stuff is good, look at the fan videos and fan movies that have been made. Some really awesome stuff. And so if the chasm between content creator and the fan base is starting to get a little bit closer, that has some real positives to it. It can also have some negatives, though, because as it gets closer, that means maybe I don't pour money in over here. Maybe I keep more of my money over here. Then that chasm all of a sudden is a problem because the money's not flowing. And so it's a great question, a great point, great talking point, really. And let's be honest, I'm sure the Hollywood folk are thinking about this. The longer these strikes go on, it's not just the actors and actresses who are getting no money. They lose money too by not having anything new. And so it's going to be interesting going forward. Now, again, there was movement today with the discussions. There at least was a response back and forth. We'll see what becomes of it. But like I was talking to you a little bit earlier, I certainly hope this doesn't drag on to 2024, because then you might see an Armageddon, so to speak, in terms of the entertainment industry. But I know you had a couple of other things left that you wanted to bring forward. What were a couple of things that you had?
Well, one, I would say, Five Nights at Freddy's coming out tomorrow, theaters and Peacock simultaneously. Now, if you can't make it to theaters, or if you don't have Peacock and nobody you like is letting you use their Peacock, I would tell you to check out a movie called Willy's Wonderland. And you can watch it on Hulu, or you can watch it for free on Tubi and Redbox and Crackle. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because the premise for this movie is, tell me if it sounds familiar. It follows a quiet drifter who is tricked into cleaning up an abandoned family entertainment center as he is stalked by 8 murderous animatronic characters possessed by the souls of a cannibalistic killer and his 7 psychotic acolytes. Does that not sound somewhat familiar? So I'm going to say, no, I did watch this one. It stars Nicolas Cage, and I don't think he says a single word in the entire movie, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, mind you.
I
But
believe he's the janitor, isn't he?
yep, he is hired to clean it, and it just I saw this, and my kids watched it with me, some of them, and they were like, "This is Five Nights at Freddy." And so, if you are a fan of Five Nights at Freddy, check that out. It's ridiculous fun. And I stress ridiculous and fun together and separately. So it's a lot of fun to check out, and one that Lord Cephas would probably enjoy too. Um, I would say that there's another superhero show dropping, or movie I should say, that's in the works over at Amazon, and I don't know if you've seen it, but Samaritan is one that came out. I think it was a few years ago. It might have been last year, but it's been a little while, and it stars Sylvester Stallone as in the title role, and he's a former superhero that laid down his blah blah blah. You know the story. It's been told so many different times,
Right.
but it's getting a sequel. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Sylvester Stallone will be playing the character. Could be, it could be flashbacks. It could be a prequel. You don't know what it is, but if you're a fan of superhero movies and Sylvester Stallone, I would say definitely check that out because it was a lot of fun. We also know Disney and Marvel is looking around for a potential director for a Thor 5. We do know in the credits of Thor 4 it says Thor will return. So we don't know who it will be, but we do know that I can never remember how to pronounce it right. Takiti will not be returning
Taika
as.
Waititi.
Thank you. That he will not be returning as the writer or director. So it's interesting. We'll have to see where it goes. But so those are my few shout outs that check them out.
Well, and the couple of things that I had just to kind of touch on here, because we're doing sort of an abbreviated Midnight Magic Musings episode 32, but we wanted to get some content out there, is that, it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of weeks how the Marvels movie does. It's not tracking very high. The trailers, in my opinion only, haven't been cut very well. And that's disappointing because I really enjoyed the Miss Marvel series, probably my favorite Disney Plus series they've done. Admittedly, maybe that's not a high mark, but I really enjoyed it. Yes, I know. I have teenagers and I enjoyed it. I really feel like you need more of her and Hart. But even more than that, dude, I need a reason to go watch the movie. I've got 3 characters who are all exchanging bodies, Freaky Friday style. Okay. But you've not told me what is the point of this movie. Oh, they're fighting someone who's a bad person. I know. That is literally the story of every comic book movie that has ever happened in the history of mankind. You haven't given me as a fan a reason to. And I'm done just going to watch movies because it has a brand on it. And I feel like that is a concern amongst not just the Marvel fan base, but normal people as well. They use the term normies online. I hate that term because it's us versus them, right? It feels that way. But you require people outside the bubble to really bolster a movie and put it over the top. I don't know how you pull people from outside the bubble when it's like, okay, it's another superhero movie. Yeah, that's fine. Didn't work for Blue Beetle. You gave me no reason to go see it. The Flash movie, you gave me a bunch of reasons not to go see it. Shazam, Failure of the Gods, you didn't really give me a great reason to see it. The trailers were never cut very well. And by the way, it's not the movie studios that do the trailers. It's an outside company that does them. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not. And then I would say Black Adam. Didn't give me a reason to go see it. The Rock is not reason enough anymore. He's like the star in Hollywood, but he couldn't get people to go. I don't know that it's superhero fatigue as much as it is inability to tell a story and excite a fan base fatigue. Earl, what do you think about that?
I would definitely agree with you. There's been a definitive lack of quality over the last several years. Again, where we're at in the film world and everything obviously took a hit because of COVID. But it's been a few years now. We should be back on our feet doing quality work, and I think that's where the issue is. Who was it with Disney said we're going to cut back on quality and focus no quantity and focus on quality.
That would have been Bob Iger, I believe.
And yeah, we haven't quite gotten there yet. So we need to do that and fix that because, Disney may be able to afford to lose massive amounts of money like it's done this year. Warner Brothers / DC / whoever, Discovery Plus / everybody else they've melded into for Max may be able to afford a certain amount of throwing money away. But all these other companies, film companies, they can afford to have a $200 million loss on one fiscal year, let alone one movie. So
look at it like this. Warner Brothers, the rumor has been they're looking to sell. Why? Because they don't want it. Their superhero division is dead on arrival. Their publishing division, in terms of the DC comic books, DOA. No, not the wrestlers too. No Chain, Skull, or 8-Ball. It's dead on arrival. They tried the New 52. Still going. Exactly. Didn't work.
I want the knife.
That was probably, a trip to the Golden Child might have helped in that regard. Perhaps Sardo Noomspa could have been a benefit for us. But the rumor is they're looking to sell. So you're right. You can't take those kind of losses on a balance sheet and think that's going to make somebody happy and want to buy you. And so they're in a tough spot. But again, we said this here in the overtime. There's a lot of places that are in that tough spot because honestly, I hate the terms we use. Oh, unprecedented. I hate that word. We're in uncharted territory, an annoying phrase. But I'm kind of out of words to use other than we're kind of in a phase right now we've not really been, where everything is uneven in terms of entertainment. We were cranking out movies for 10 years, big billion-dollar movies, as you said. And then all of a sudden, not as much. And now it's drying up. And you said what? The new gold standard's $500 million, $500 million. Look, in the 80s and 90s, people would have done backflips over that. And today we look at it and go, oh, what a failure. It's just interesting how the vernacular and the mindset has changed. But what that has done is created unreal expectations for a lot of these movie production companies. And again, I don't mean this negatively, but I think this is kind of the result of running up the costs, running up the price, running up the bigger, better, badder. Then all of a sudden we have a couple of misses and it starts incrementally coming down. And I think that's kind of where they are. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I would say that's exactly where they're at. And it's sad, but something's going to change. I do want to give a shout out, though. We recently had I believe it was yesterday, we had an acclaimed actor pass away. Richard Roundtree, who was born July 9th of 1942, passed away on the 24th. He's known for Roots. He was on Desperate Housewives, but I think, he was in Earthquake too with Charlton Heston. And but I think the role he is quite famous for would have to be Shaft. Back in the day, back in the early 70s. But he didn't play a Shaft-ish role in Samuel Jackson's Shaft movie, and I think there was a second one he was in as well. But he didn't play the main Shaft that we knew from the 70s that was portrayed by Samuel Jackson. But he passed away, so a moment of silence for the OG. And you know what? It's sad when we see it, but it reminds us of our own mortality a little bit as well. So, especially when we see people we grew up watching
Mm.
and they pass. So it's a sobering thought here on Midnight Magic Museum that the Earl is actually being serious for a moment, and that moment's over. Back to you, Lord Cephas.
I knew that wasn't going to last very long. No, it is interesting because the Shaft movies, Foxy Brown, there's so many movies there, and careful there, in the 70s that have been termed blaxploitation films. But these are movies we grew up watching because they were readily available to be able to be seen, right? But yeah, it's a generation that really that doesn't resonate with my girls who have different ethnicities, different heritages. They just look at that and go, well, that's silly because you didn't grow up in that time to understand why that was cool to us or why that was cutting edge or why that was taboo. And so unfortunately, Mr. Roundtree passed away, but yeah, it's iconic, but kind of as time progresses, the iconography, I don't know how you'd say the word. It kind of dwindles over time as generations change and as the way society looks at things change. You look at Disney and they'll put a caption up on a movie. It depicts old thoughts and ideas and opinions. TV Land does the same thing. When I watch an episode of MASH, which I'm a big fan of that, always will be, they'll put that up there as a disclaimer. Why? Because there's things in it today that don't pass our sensibilities test. And some things you're like, that's not good. It doesn't hold up well. And unfortunately, we're kind of that way in society where he doesn't get maybe the respect or the adulation he's deserved for such an iconic character, maybe because of the time in which it was made. I don't know. Just something to consider. What else would you like to bring up?
Pretty much the only other thing I would say is that while one legend passes away, another legend is brought back in the comic books. We have a return of Flash Gordon, 90 plus years old IP, and he's returning to the comics once again. There's a classic movie back in the what would have been early 70s in the same era with Flash Gordon, I believe, but there was also a sci-fi channel had a short film. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see the return. And Flash belongs to a time of like Tarzan and Doctor Strange, not the Doctor Strange we're familiar with, but a different Doctor Strange, and the Phantom, and this older mentality and ideology, and that, like you said, they're icons of an era. But will it find fans? Will it be popular again? I don't know. I don't know if it has the ability to, because it's so far out of its time zone. And that's the last one I was going to mention, was the return of Flash. Oh.
So it's interesting you bring that up because that's just fun to do, but it's going to be a daily comic strip. So that's going to be interesting how that's received and how successful that is, because I don't see a lot of people reading newspapers anymore. And so I'm sure it'll be available digitally, but I don't know how people consume their media with that either. So that'll be pretty interesting. I will argue this. There's a show in the mid 1980s called Defenders of the Earth. It's Flash Gordon. It's the Phantom. It's Mandrake the Magician and Lothar and their children. Going to My Grave, Earl, one of the best theme songs ever. I don't care that it's animated. It's rocking. It's like, ow! So good. I just have to say, YouTube it, folks. Defenders of the Earth. I believe it was 84, 85. It only lasted for about a season and a half. It was a good series, and they actually had death in it, which in the mid-80s, looking back, I'm like, how did my mama let me watch that? Looking back now, I'm like, oh, that's horrid. As a kid, I just didn't get it. It was over my head. But it's cool to see Flash Gordon come back. And that's a generation or two before us. I'll give you one more. As you were talking, I thought you're talking about A Man Out of Time. Buck Rogers. Love that show. 79 to 81. The 79 to 80 season, very good. Then they had a writer strike and an actor strike. And it got retooled. It got pushed back late. It got retooled. That's when they ended up on The Searcher, looking for the lost tribes of Earth, which was a Glenn Larson trope from Battlestar Galactica, if you remember, right? I always wanted to know why they didn't meet, but I digress. In reality, Gil Gerard, who was Buck Rogers, didn't like the first season, thought it was too campy and silly. He wanted something more serious. And if you go watch season 2, it is more serious. He actually does get to act. But it just wasn't the formula that season 1 was. It was canceled thereafter. But that, again, you mentioned Flash Gordon. I just thought Buck Rogers, which, by the way, random fact for everybody, because, again, we're in overtime. We're just chit-chatting here. One of the first season episodes of Buck Rogers, he and Wilma, Colonel Deering, get captured. And they have to send in a squadron of the Starfighters, which I love those things, by the way. They were so cool back in the day. Always wanted to fly one. That and the Defiant, but I digress. There is an older officer who saves him, and he makes a statement in the series, "Hey, thanks for that. That's great shooting. Who was that?" And the fella introduces himself. He's an older fella. And they basically have this like 30-second back and forth. He's like, "Oh, I'm old." He goes, "Young man, I was doing this before you were even born." And he says back to him, "You think so?" He goes, "I know so." And that's it. What I find out years later, the gentleman he's interacting with was the very first Buck Rogers. Exactly. They brought him back just for that scene to put him in the cockpit to have that interaction because somebody had the foresight to say, that'd be cool. Now that's lost on this generation, probably the one right before us too. But going back and watching, I'm like, wow, that was a really deep cut for people who knew. They didn't have to do that. So a lot of these properties have a lot of goodwill, a lot of great memories. I just don't know. Thank you. I try. I don't know how you resurrect them to get people's attention today because there's so many competing ideas, so many IPs that are already there. Star Wars crushed everything. I don't mean that negatively. It just did. Star Trek, obviously. When you start naming all the top science fiction franchises, unfortunately today, Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers don't get mentioned. And to be honest, they've been out of the limelight for years. Now, they do a Flash Gordon series, like you said, on Sci-Fi for a while. Mixed results. But, I hope it does well. I look forward to following it. I do love my comics. And so we'll see if Flash Gordon can catch on. That would be very, very cool. I have one more topic, if you don't mind. And that is, as most of you know who listen to the show regularly, the Earl and I were raised in faith-based homes. So we'll cover faith-based movies because that's just a part of who we are. We don't hide it. We're not ashamed of it. We're very proud. And we had a faith-based movie that set a record. And Fathom Events, if you're not familiar with them, if you go to the movie theaters, you'll see a Fathom Events special, a special presentation. And usually it's an opera or it's some documentary or it's some type of musical tour like BTS had last year that I went to with my oldest. But they have all these special events. We saw G.I. Joe the movie last year as a special event. We did one of our early Midnight Magic meetings. In fact, I think it was episode 2, maybe 2 or 3. It was early on. Yeah, it was early on. They did one called The Blind, which is a story of Phil Robertson, otherwise known as the Duck Commander, father of Willie and Jace and brother to Uncle Si from Duck Dynasty. Very popular run there on A&E for about 8 seasons. And it's the story of his life, I guess, high school, college, when he was at Louisiana Tech, Miss Kay, who was his wife, and all the things went there. And they admit, by the way, in podcasts leading up to this, there's some embellishment. It's not perfectly exact because in some ways, there's some things they didn't want to portray in the movie because of the negative nature of it. And hey, we understand that. But it set a record, Earl. 15.7 million. Now, that may not seem like a lot to people, but you got to understand, this movie only was going to be set for about an 8-day run because Fathom Events is only certain times. It's been extended to over 3 weeks. It got extended 3 different times, and it's made almost $16 million. That's a huge hit. And so I want to give a shout out to the writers, the directors, those who believed in the project, because it's good to have faith-based movies in the marketplace, much less pretty good ones. Because we lived through some that were, we lived through the 70s movies, the precursors, you might say, to the Left Behind movies. A Distant Thunder. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. That's all. If you've never seen it, I can't explain it. You would have had to have lived it to see it. But Earl, what's your take on faith-based movies? Especially, we're kind of in a bit of a golden period here.
It's interesting you talk about it because recently, earlier this year, we had what was it called? The one with Jim Caviezel, Sound of Freedom.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was also through I believe it's the same company, the Angel Studios, did that, and everybody made fun of it for multiple different reasons. But the budget for that was $14.5 million, and they ended up getting their money pretty much out of it. The ones who ended up with it, and pretty much got it for free almost. And the box office for The Sound of Freedom was $238 million. 230. You're at almost $250 million. And I mean, mind you, this film is darker. It's got more serious adult themes than you would consider bringing your family to see. Right. But it was also, a faith-based concept Christian movie that nobody thought would ever make money like it did. But you know what? It did. And there have been so many different ones. You can name a few actors. Like Kevin Sorbo has been in a bunch of them. You can name who played Buck in the new Left Behind movie, Cameron.
Kirk Cameron?
Kirk Cameron. He's been in multiple, including one that was called Fireproof that made sizable. And so, I mean, part of the reason I believe that the faith-based movies and shows are working so well, which, by the way, Chosen Season 4 will be dropping in February. The whole month it's going to be doing an interesting way of doing it. They're going to drop, I think it's 2 episodes at a time, I think per week in theaters as like a movie length. So whatever they make there is just extra money because they don't really need to do much advertising or marketing because people know about this. And it's showing on pretty much every streaming service out there, free and paid. And so they have fans across the board. So I think they'll be doing well in there. But for overall, I think the reason most faith-based films are doing well right now is they're in their niche, their low niche. They know where this is how much we should spend. This is what the purpose we're doing it. And if we make money, we make money. And if we don't, at least because we have a budget that we're being sensible with, like the horror genre does it, and the romance genre does it, even though that's even a little bit smaller than that. I mean, and animation takes liberties, some of the larger ones do, but I mean, the smaller companies that still produce, they look at it and go, we're not going to make a movie for $200 million. We're not going to make anything back. So we'd be sensible and focus on quality. And that's pretty much all I had about to say that. What do you have to say, Mr. Rebuttal?
Not a rebuttal, but I'll bring up another movie from earlier, Jesus Revolution. Very successful. Now, for those who didn't see it, it's based on the life of a certain church out in California and a minister. And by the way, not a perfect story. Not everybody wins in the end because that's the way life is. That's not how life is. But it was very successful. A lot of people saw it. It got very good reviews from the critics. So I guess we're kind of in a bit of a golden period where it's not all heavy-handed. Now, you mentioned Kevin Sorbo, who was in the most recent Left Behind movie. I guess that's, what would that be? Rise of the Antichrist, I think it is. And yes, we're not ashamed to admit we watch those movies and we watch them for what they are, right? We enjoy them. I know he was in the God's Not Dead series as well. So yeah, we've seen some very interesting movies. Now, one of the challenges faith-based movies have had, or excuse me, faith-based movies have had in the past is quality. And it's just nice to see that we're starting to see, well, oh, look, there is some quality taking place in these movies, because you want to be a good representative, right? If that's what you believe, hey, be the very best at it that you can be. And that's good to see that they're able to do that. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. 15.7 million over 3 weeks is really good. In fact, truth be told, it was in the top 10 for 3 weeks. It was actually number 4 for about a week and a half. So that's a really good accounting and showing of itself. And by the way, you're gonna have physical media. You're gonna make money off of that. You'll have PVODs, right? So you can order it on demand. You'll have that. They'll make additional monies in. They'll make their budget plus, and everybody will be okay. Which, by the way, Earl, this is my final one. This is what this leads to, and that is Best Buy announced that next year they are not going to be selling physical media any longer. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because for the most part, I can get pretty much anything on streaming that I want. For the most part, not everything is available on streaming. There's older series that just have never hit streaming and, be honestly, don't even have a physical media component. I am getting the Nightman series. Yes, you know, I love my Nightman. There is a boxed set that you can buy of that. That will be arriving, as will my Airwolf 4 Seasons box set as well. Earl, how do you feel about us moving away from physical media? I guess this is where we're going to end up.
Well, it's interesting you were talking about that, because I have I bought the first. I've got the first 2 seasons of Arrow and the first season of the Flash on. I got the box office, the box set of them. I had picked up. I found it for a steal. No, that doesn't mean I stole. I'm the Earl, not Baron. But you know, so I enjoy. I love the first 2 seasons of Arrow. I love the first season of Flash. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to grab these. They're on sale. Grab them. But my concern is I've got 5 kids, and I know how DVD, VHS tapes, for those who remember VHS tapes, Be Kind, Rewind. We those things were survive anything, and you couldn't mess them up unless you did it on purpose, or your VCR just enjoyed eating them, which we had a few of those growing up. DVDs, if you get a scratch on the surface, you're potentially just wasted however much money you paid on it. So I'm like, I'm going to put this in my room and hide it so the kids can't get to it. But when I opened them, on the inside of the sleeve, long story short, is a code for the digital version of it that I can redeem on Vudu, which is now owned by it's a video streaming platform that's now owned by Walmart. So I got on, I redeemed them, and with my email, and so as long as Walmart's around, I can watch this digitally and not worry about them getting scratched up foreseeably, And for me, that was like a big side, because now I'm like, I don't have to worry about the actual DVDs getting scratched up. Now, I do have DVDs. I don't buy them anymore, because, like you said, everything's streaming somewhere. Everything is streaming pretty much, unless you're talking old school things like Lord Cephas. And at that point, obviously, it's hard to find certain things. But you know what? I'm okay with it, because I've got 5 kids. So when I don't have 5 kids, there's a good chance I will go back to actually collecting the physical copies again.
Well, Earl, I can't argue with you on that, the 5 kids or the collecting of the physical media. All right. Well, this has been a bit of an abbreviated version of our Midnight Magic Musings, episode 32. We had a lot going on this week. We have done a tremendous amount of recordings and postings over the last couple of weeks, but we are at Midnight Magic Musings, episode 32. We wanted to get something out this weekend. It's Halloween weekend. We definitely wanted to make sure that we interacted with our peeps, with our followers, with our fans. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening and for watching. And then again, we have but one thing to ask of you, and that is, if you've not clicked the like button, please do so. It really does help us in the YouTube algorithm. We've been very fortunate. Our subscribers continue to grow. And if you have not been one of our subscribers, we humbly ask of you, hey, consider clicking that button. Turn it to gray. Get all the content that we provide, from Midnight Magic Musings to the Realm of Reality, to the Watcher Files, to all of our daily terrible, awful, miserable things that make you want to hurt yourself. Dad jokes. That's an original, although the Earl does weigh in from time to time. We do This Day in History for wrestling, for our wrestling fans, and our Combat One Wrestling podcast. We also drop PSAs because you know what? We care about you. We care about you adults. We care about the kids. We care about your hydration. We care about you hurting yourself. And we try to give you ways to not do that. So we have so many things that we do on this channel. And then finally, listen, please share this thing out on your social media platform of choice. If you enjoy what you heard here today and what you've seen, hey, share that out if you would. If you didn't like it, that's okay. We thank you for listening, but we just ask, hey, share it anyway. Find someone you want to annoy. Send us to them. We're here to help you. Help us help you. All right. On behalf of the Earl of Florida, I am still your humble host, the Lord Cephas. This has been Midnight Magic Musings, episode number 32, an overtime session where we talk about just some of the random things that are on our minds, things that we are looking forward to. Earl, I will see you again next week, because with our next episode, with Midnight Magic Musings, episode 33, we tie the Marvel Cinematic Universe for releases, at least theatrically for them. We will now be tied with them, which means in 2 weeks, as the NWO once famously said, we are taking over. On behalf of the Earl of Florida, I'm your humble host, Lord Cephas. We're coming for you. We're coming for you, Marvel. Nah, just kidding. Everybody be blessed, stay safe, take care. And we will say, until next time, America. So long, everybody.